Coach, we talked a couple of weeks ago about that victory over Lewis where there was some emotions getting running a little high during that game from the players at halftime, and it kind of spurred that team to a victory over Lewis. And since then, you've won 3 of 4 games so far this season since that Lewis victory. Can you see that and those emotions that kind of got high as a turning point for the way the season has continued on?
I think at that moment that was important, but what's happened, I think, recently, our defense intensity and our ability to take away space of our opponent has increased a lot. So it started especially, we had a big bump at McKendree, and we didn't guard well in terms of really getting into people and not fouling, but just we made it too easy for guys to get good rhythm shots, and we learned from that game. And at Springfield that following Saturday, we improved, and then we knew going into the Quincy game. Quincy's a really physical team, and they're big guys. They screen hard. They hold their screens hard. They clear you out inside. They block you out hard. I mean, we knew the Quincy game was going to be very physical. So last week in practice, that was really a big part of our focus, and I think it extended throughout the whole week. And I thought our defense, especially against Truman, we were able to switch their motion action and keep them in front of us for most of the game. Gave us a really good chance to rebound and contest shots. And then, of course, we made some shots against Truman, and that was a big part of what's kind of been a total transformation. And we're playing better. We're a new group of guys that are learning how to play in this league. I mean, you think about it, we only had really Gavin Schumann and Austin Davis are the only two that played in the GLVC, and they're the only two that understand what it's like to go to places and how teams play, and that's a big part of college basketball also.
Well, you talk about that Truman State game. You guys get the win over the weekend, and your bench players came out and played strong, outscoring the Truman State reserves 22-9. Give us a few names of guys that came off the bench, came up big for you in that game, and what their expectations are when called upon.
Well, sometimes stats are a little misleading when you look at them at face value. For instance, like bench. When you look at bench scoring, that can sometimes mean what it says, and sometimes it's misleading. And in our case, George Edwards is a starter. He's a guy that comes in about the 3-minute mark into the game, and he and Shane split some time. Austin Davis, the three of them are rotating right now. But George Edwards set the tone. We struggled early, 12-2, got down on Truman. We couldn't find an avenue to score. Their defense was not letting us move the ball, and we weren't moving well without the ball. And then George got some opportunities. He got several baskets for us to get this thing going, and that was a big factor. And Travis Britt had a basket against Truman, and Brett Benning didn't score. But those three guys did a very nice job all in all. It's that time of year when everyone's shortening their bench. I mean, we basically played 7 guys against Truman. We played 8 guys against Quincy. Antonio Drummond played the entire 40 minutes. And I look for, he and Gavin and Tennell and Austin, those 4 guys specifically, to be logging the high 30 minutes. So the whole bench scoring thing's can be a little bit misleading. In our case, George gives us such a lift, George Edwards, because he can score in different ways. He's hard to guard. And Travis Britt's playing exceptionally well right now.
We're talking with USI head basketball coach Rodney Watson. It's Ford and O'Brien on ESPN Evansville 105.3 and online at ESPNEvansville.com. Coach, you bring up George Edwards. He was a monster in the paint. It looked like on Saturday night there against Truman State. But now on the flip side, defensively, you were quoted in the paper a while back, and it's no secret. You want your defense to be more aggressive. Are you seeing that happening, or are they, like you said, come tournament time, you step it up a little? Is the defense getting more aggressive like you want it to?
Our defense has certainly gotten more aggressive in the last 10 days, and it's going to continue to be that way. We go to UMSL on Thursday and Maryville on Saturday. Teams that play. See, the neat thing about our league, and not so neat if you're trying to defend it, is that everyone plays different. Everyone has a different style. Truman runs the real, Coach Knight, Coach Cruz, Coach Simmons motion offense that people in Evansville and in Indiana basketball have grown to appreciate. They run the real stuff. A lot of people talk about motion, but they're just running around. Truman, as an example, they will run my concept of the motion, what I see, and it's very hard to coach, and it takes a lot of energy, and it requires such a buy-in on your players' part. When you watch good motion teams, they're getting two screen options. They're getting a down screen, a back screen, maybe different angles, and that guy coming off the screen, he is in concert with the guy setting the screen. So when people know that we switch on those screens, they're going to practice the screen and the dive to the basket. Or instead of going on the baseline, go baseline, come back. Now that is really tough to guard. You have to have pressure on the ball. You have to have weak side help. You've got to have great communication. We talked all week in practice to get ready for that. We had to with the 2 and 3 men who were guarding that screening action. We had to do what we called setting a fence, where you come together and literally touch like you're a picket fence, and then everybody just melds out with the guy with their new man. Now, it might sound easy when we talk about it. It's very tough to execute. By and large, our guys did a terrific job, and that's something we just weren't ready to do. Prior to the last couple of weeks. One, it's a new concept. It's a new bunch of guys coming together. What I'm really proud of, just like I said, kids have to buy into the motion offense. You have to buy in defensively as well. And with this group, it's never been a question about these kids not buying in. It's just a matter of them coming together and really playing together.
Talk, Coach, if you don't mind, talk a little bit. I saw the article on the Courier and Press website, but 2 players you've got now that aren't contributing right this minute but are expected to next season. Talk to us a little bit about Joe Godfried and TJ Tisdale and how they got to become part of the team.
Well, starting with TJ Tisdale, we recruited him pretty hard last year out of John Wood College over at Quincy. They went to the national tournament. He was a double-figured. He's a double-double guy. He averaged 20 points and about 11 or 12 rebounds, and that's something that really works for us, and it works for everybody. And we were unfortunate last spring, not to be able to sign him. He ended up going to California Riverside, a Division I program on the West Coast, obviously, and then we got a call late in the semester in the fall that things hadn't worked out the way he thought they would, and so we re-recruited him again, and we're fortunate that TJ's with us. He's a big help to our program right now. It's not by surprise that both he and Joe have really helped us become better both offensively and defensively, because they're 2 good guys to practice against. Joe Godfrey's a recognizable name here in Evansville. His father, Dan, was a great player at UE, and Joe had gone to high school here, and then his senior year went to Elkhart Central, ended up going to IU South Bend to start his college career for 2 years. And Joe came into my office at the end of the summer and said that he was wishing to transfer. And I didn't know the story, and it's a very heartfelt story. His mother was just involved in a senseless crime of murder in a Martin's food store actually January 16th, and it was just a situation where Joe needed a new environment, and his brother was down here living, and so Joe came down, enrolled in school, and asked if he could be on the team, and it's really working out nicely. Joe's a great guy, and he's a terrific teammate, and none of us would ever want to wish to trade places with him, but he's a guy that's trying to readjust his life, and it's quite a story in itself.
Well, Coach, his dad, Dan Godfried, is back in my day a little bit, I guess, if you will. I remember him quite well. Is Joe a little bit along that line? Because Dan Godfried, his dad, was big and just physical, and I mean mean maybe is the word inside. If you came in, it wasn't going to be easy to get the shot off. Do you kind of see that in Joe?
I don't think there'll be any comparison between Dan and Joe, and Joe's his own guy. He's 6'8", he's 250, he's a horse. He is. I can promise you this: Joe is not scared of anything. With what he's dealt with in his life, a basketball game's a pretty. He definitely has an excellent perspective on life about what's really important. But Joe's a terrific worker. He's not a real finesse guy. He's kind of the old school power forward type guy. But he'll be a guy that we welcome coming next fall.
Talking to USI men's basketball coach Rodney Watson, the Menard Studio Hotline. It's Ford and O'Brien on ESPN Evansville 105.3 and online, ESPNEvansville.com. One more for you, Coach, and we'll let you go. If you could, just some thoughts on the passing of Dean Smith and what he brought to the game of basketball.
Dean Smith and John Wooden and so many of the others, that when guys like myself who grew up in high school in the 70s and they were having their great run, and of course, Dean Smith all the way through the 90s. Dean Smith was a great innovator of the game. You know, everyone panicked when he went to the four-corner offense, and that's what brought on the shot clock. And I laugh about that because no one else was going to play the four-corner, and he only did it because Ralph Sampson was 7 foot in the middle, and all of a sudden we changed the game. You know, college basketball changes rules almost like we changed clothes. And then I think about, compare that to Major League Baseball. They moved the mound when 3 dynamic pitchers were dominating hitters, and they dropped the mound 6 inches. But Dean Smith was a great innovator. I really encourage anyone that wants to get in the coaching profession to go grab every piece of literature you can on a guy like Dean Smith. He not only coached basketball, he was a terrific mentor, and think about all the many coaches that have come through his his presence. I think of guys like Kevin Stallings and all the guys that go through him, and Roy Williams' people, and just how many people have been influenced directly by Dean Smith. I had the opportunity to watch him in a one-man clinic back in the fall of 1984 in St. Louis, and he just had such a wonderful personality, and he was just a normal person in that big clinic setting. But great loss for college basketball, but having gained a great man.
Safe travels over to St. Louis. You guys face University of Missouri St. Louis on Thursday. Best of luck to you in that game, and we'll talk again next week, Coach.
Thanks for having. It's a huge game. There's so much riding on this game with postseason implications, and what's really neat with our team is we put ourselves in a position that we're playing for something very significant.